So today I came into possession of something pretty interesting. It's a Super Famicom Box. This was a version of the Super Famicom, being the Japanese Super Nintendo, that Nintendo would sell to hotels, and it would come preloaded with a bunch of demo versions of games that I think you had to pay to access. I don't know. I'll probably make a full-fledged video about it at some point later, but right now what I'm more focused on is the unit itself. As I'm sure you can tell by the title, it did not have the smoothest journey getting here from Japan. So I bought this on Yahoo Auctions Japan through a proxy service called Buyee, and they had an option for protective packaging, but it would have added some weight and cost to the shipping, and I don't know, I cheaped out a little bit and it ended up really biting me in the butt. So I'll show you a picture of what it's supposed to look like first, just so we can get that out of the way. I'm sure whatever picture I'm choosing is very clean looking, very nice. And now I'm gonna show you what I received in the mail today. This was not supposed to be this damaged. It arrived in a cardboard box that was like one layer thick between the outside world and the sides of this thing, and most of it is made out of metal, so it's not those parts didn't seem to be affected, but what really took the brunt of the damage, as you can clearly see, is this front panel, which is completely made out of plastic. I think these are pretty brittle to begin with, just because of their age and maybe the type of plastic, because I see a lot of pictures of these with chips out of them, and you might ask, if you knew they were so fragile, why didn't you pay for the protective packaging? And my answer is, I don't know, I took a bet. But now we are going to take a look at it here and try to restore it. So you'll notice that there are a lot of pieces that are just outright missing from the corners here, a lot of pieces of plastic. I believe that I have most of them that were just like scattered around the box. And my goal is, so I came prepared here. My goal is to try and use some of this Loctite plastic bonding system stuff to try and like perform some reconstructive surgery on this front plastic panel. I don't know how it's gonna go. It might go horribly wrong. I mean, I figure there's not much of a chance that I can make it look worse than it already does, so any attempt is worthwhile in my eyes. As you can see, these controllers are very yellowed. It might not even look that bad on camera from what I can see in the preview, but they are pretty yellowed. I might try to do some sort of retro brighting on these, but the good news with these controllers is that they're just normal Super Famicom controllers, so you can get normal controllers used for pretty cheap and just switch out the housing and it'll look very nice again. I want to also show you the games that it came with. So we have this top cartridge. I want to be very careful when I pull this out because I know at least one of these suffered quite a bit of damage. This thing must have been just like thrown around in shipping, and I honestly should have been expecting that, but this is what the games look like. They come on these like huge cartridges. They're called Super Famicom Box cassettes, and these are obviously not consumer goods that were ever sold. These are proprietary, made specifically for this device, and I haven't even powered it on yet. I don't know if it works after the damage it suffered. I'm assuming and hoping that it does, because just taking a look visually at the circuit board and stuff on the inside, it doesn't seem to be damaged. I think it's mostly just the plastic that's been damaged cosmetically. This cassette has very little damage. It's just, I don't know if you can see this, on this one corner, there, you can see there's one crack right here on this little mechanism that you use to remove the cassettes. I wish the camera would focus. It's like the bane of my existence. You can see that crack there. So that should be pretty trivial to fix, hopefully. Something that's annoying about this whole unit is that on the outside you have these screws that hold this metal housing on. And it would be much easier to work on if I could just remove the metal housing, but these screws use the Nintendo proprietary security bit. And normally I'd have a bit to undo those, like you can see on these cassette cartridges. They also have the weird proprietary bit, but the ones on this metal housing are bigger than what they normally put on their home consoles. So that means that currently I have no way of taking the metal housing off because I can't get the screws off. Let me show you the second one. So let me just quickly say this cassette has, what is this? This is, I think it's Super Bomberman 2. And down here it's Super Donkey Kong. So Donkey Kong Country was called Super Donkey Kong in Japan. So this one has Bomberman 2, Super Bomberman 2, and Donkey Kong Country. And this other one, which I want to be very careful with because, as you'll be able to see shortly, it has this huge gash in it on the top, and it has just like this hole on the bottom. I think I have all the pieces of plastic to try and fix that. But yeah, this cartridge has Star Fox, Super Mario Kart, and I think this is Super Mario World? The plan of action is, I guess, so what I've researched shows me that this thing will not boot if this red cartridge is not installed, specifically this one. So what I might try to do is plug this in and plug the thing into the wall just to see if it turns on. And if it doesn't, we'll have some additional repair work to do, some actual electronics repair, which I'm more experienced with. But yeah, here's hoping that it doesn't come to that. So I've got some good news, being that it powers on, as you can see from this LED that corresponds to the game power. But what you'll see up on the TV screen is that there's this message with a little, I'm assuming, basic loading bar on the bottom that translates, according to Google, to initializing the machine, please wait for a while. I'm pretty sure. I mean, it seems like a reasonable translation for what's on the screen right now. But as you can see, it's doing this boot loop, it seems, where every time it gets to the 5th asterisk, it hangs and then resets itself. That might be because one of these games isn't inserted properly or some board became unseated. I'm going to investigate that, but in the meantime, I think I'm just going to focus on the cosmetics of the front panel. So next thing I'm going to do is take out these screws on the front and try to get the plastic off. And I kind of predict that in that process, this plastic panel might fall into more pieces. I think there might be some that are being held together just because they're screwed onto the front panel. So I'll see you in a moment. Okay, so quick update. When I moved the cartridge that it needs to boot, the damaged one, from the bottom slot to the top slot, it seems to be turning on, as you can tell by the music and the game selection up there. Let me just, yep, the controllers both seem to be inputting, which is great. Let me just boot up Mario Kart. Yes, so I think the next step is going to be to put in the second cartridge into the bottom slot to see if it picks up on that, because if it runs into issues again, then I'm gonna have to investigate that bottom slot, because it seems like that would be the common denominator. Maybe some traces came unsoldered or something. I don't know, but I'm just happy that it is functioning despite its cosmetic issues. Okay, so I've got some more good news to share. Technology-wise, I put the second cartridge in on the bottom slot, as you can see, and up on the screen, we could get it to boot. I don't know who we is, it's just me alone here. I got it to boot, and you can see that the other two games on the second cartridge are showing up there on the bottom, being Donkey Kong Country and Super Bomberman 2. And just to make sure that that cartridge is working, I'm gonna boot into Donkey Kong Country, and it seems to be fine. Yeah, I'm really happy about this. It means that the repairs that need to happen to this are purely cosmetic. So I think the next step, as I mentioned a second ago, is going to be to remove the front panel and try and start gluing some things together where they fit. It's going to be a fun puzzle.
quite amazing. It took 20 hours to put it all back together.
Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that time lapse of me gluing all of this together. I'm pretty happy with the job I was able to do, just picking up all the pieces, seeing where they go, and gluing them. There's some issues in this corner, being that there's just like a lot of visible cracks, and there's like this hole here. I'm gonna, I think, try to fill those cracks and holes in with some sort of epoxy or super glue baking soda mixture. I haven't decided yet, but I'm gonna try and fill this in, make it look a bit smoother, because it's pretty unsightly like that. Although it seems pretty sturdy, even just from an hour or two of curing. Yeah, I'm not happy about the fact that around a lot of the cracks where I super glued stuff together, there's this like shiny residue, or in some places like a white residue. So what I think I'm gonna do is cover up all of these labels and spray paint it. Just give it a couple coats of black spray paint, or maybe even just one, after I try to fill in these holes over here. And hopefully after that, this piece will be looking pretty good. This is what I'm left with. It's just like, I don't know, 20 or so little like bits. This is one half of the cassette, the half that I left the sticker on, and the half that has the label on top. If you remember before, this gash along here used to be way more prominent. This whole thing was like separated here. I was afraid it was just gonna like fall off, but that's all super glued together now with the plastic bonder. And on the other side, there's this guy, which suffered a lot more damage. This was the piece that actually had this whole upper portion just like crumbled into bits. And I think I did a pretty good job reconstructing that. You can still, they're not showing up that clearly on camera, but there are still, yeah, you can kind of see them now, some cracks that you can see between these pieces. I'm not too concerned about that. I might try to sand some of this residue down from the plastic bonder, but beyond that, I don't think there's much else I'm gonna do for this piece. It's gonna be inside of the box anyway, so yeah, just as long as it's put back together, I'm okay living with the visible cracks on the bottom here. So there was a slight change of plan in how I was gonna patch those cracks and holes. What I decided to do, since I had a lot of bits of plastic that I couldn't glue back into place, they were just too small, too hard to find the right place, I melted them all down in this bowl with acetone and took the resulting mixture and just kind of spread it very roughly over the affected area. So it's a little bit hard to see. So you can kind of see what I'm talking about. I just went over the areas that had a lot of cracks, filled in some of the holes like you can see on this corner. And my plan is, since it's going to leave a very rough finish, I'm going to take some sandpaper once this is completely dry, it's not completely dry yet, I'm going to sand it down so it's not as rough anymore. And then after that, I'm going to mask out these labels and spray paint the whole thing so that it's all uniform in look. And then I think we should be about done with this piece, so I'm excited for that. So after the sanding, this is what we're left with. Let's try and get the light shining on this so you can see. So you'll notice it's obviously discolored on the parts where I applied the liquidized plastic, and that was kind of expected. I wasn't hoping for it to come out looking particularly good after this, and that's why I'm going in and spray painting. I am really happy with how this corner turned out. If you remember before, it was all covered in cracks. It looked like it could come apart any second, but now, even though it is slightly textured around here, there's still there's not many cracks left at this point. So very happy about that. You can see over here on these corners where there used to be holes, those are now patched up. There was one over here too. Sorry for the glare now. There was one over here too that's now patched. And like I said before, my plan is to spray paint this now so that it can all be a uniform color and finish. I went ahead and I masked over all of the labels. Sorry, I'm just brushing some sand off that I'm feeling now. And yeah, hopefully that will keep all of these labels protected, because obviously we want to retain those and not get paint on them. Okay, so we're outside. We're gonna spray paint this. For the paint, I chose a flat coat. I think that probably matches what's on there already the best. And we're gonna hope for the best. I really have no expectations for how this is gonna turn out, other than that, like, I hope it's all right. Well then. Okay, so I moved into the garage because it's really windy out today, coincidentally. Okay, I'm just gonna do a little test spot on the cardboard. All right, it is black. All right, so there's the sides. So, since these pieces of the cassette are now bonded and dry, I think this would be a good opportunity to put it back together. I don't want to leave it apart for too long, because the sticker that has half of the sticky side exposed is already starting to collect a little bit of dust on it, and I want to mitigate that as much as I can. So, there are these two little tabs that help eject the cassette that go onto these poles. And let me look at the other one to make sure I'm doing it in the right orientation. Okay, so the long sides have to face in like that. And now comes the board that the ROMs are on. Something interesting that I noticed about this board is that there are slots for 3 additional ROM chips. So I guess this board is technically capable of holding 6 different ROMs. I don't know, someone can correct me on that in the comments. That's just my visual analysis of this board. So I believe I have to put it in with the components facing down. Like that. Very nice. Yep, looks right. And now this top piece of the shell, cracks and all. And also, I need to try and get these pieces together like that. All right, it's a little bit jank still, but it's a lot better than being in pieces, I think. So let's try and screw this together. And I think that does it. It's held together pretty solidly now. Let me just get that sticker pressed back down. And yeah, it is reassembled. Very nice. So something else I want to do right now is repair one of these buttons. So these are the 2 buttons that are on the front panel of the unit. And what happened was, while I was taking it apart, I thought that I had to unclip the buttons out of this retention thing in order to take the front panel off, but turns out I didn't actually have to do that, and in the process I snapped off one of the 2 sides, and I tried to glue it back on and you know, let it set, let it harden, whatever, and then snap it back into place. But when I tried doing that, not only did the one that I already fixed fall off again, but the other side did as well. So now I have both of the holding, whatever you want to call those, the little hooks off of the button, and I think what I'm gonna have to do is kind of repair the button in place. So I need to think of a way to hold this button depressed while I glue these on, and then like leave it like that while the glue sets, and that should do what we need it to. It kind of gives you an idea of just how brittle the plastic on this is. The fact that like just trying to insert the button back into place, which is like a completely expected thing to do with a button that's designed this way. You pop them out, pop them back in, and the 2 arms just snapped off. So we're gonna try to do something about that. So I've thought about it for a minute, and I'm gonna try to zip tie the button in place. I think that will do what we need it to. So let me just get this guy on and tighten it down so the button is held in place. And now while it's held down, I'm just gonna use the plastic bonder to get these 2 hooks back on. All right, so here is the panel after being spray painted. You can see it has a very nice finish. And I just started peeling up one of the labels just cause. And I'm noticing something happening that I'm a little bit worried about. That is that it seems like there's some paint that has gotten under the edges of the masking tape. Around these edges, there's a little bit of extra paint there. I'm gonna keep pulling very carefully and hope that whatever paint does get on the inner plastic, I can try to get up with something very carefully. I haven't thought that part through yet. I'm not sure if it's 100% feasible, but I'm gonna try. So I'm just gonna very carefully start pulling these labels off. And what I really don't want to have happen, and this is also something I'm a little bit scared of, is I don't want any of the underlying paint on the labels to come up as a part of the tape coming off. Okay, so all in all, not terrible. So what I ended up doing was taking some Q-tips and just some rubbing alcohol and going over the areas that had paint residue. I think it looks pretty good. Now, I'll be the first to admit that this paint job is not perfect. There are imperfections all over the place. Well, maybe not all over the place, but like this corner in particular, there are a few. Let me turn this light on so you can see. There are a few ugly spots, and around a lot of these labels, even though there's not a lot of residue left on the labels themselves, there's still ridges around where the masking tape was, and I'm not sure if there's much I could have done about that, but yeah, overall, I'm really happy with how this turned out, and the next step is going to be to put it back on the unit. So I figured now would be a good opportunity to just clean up the unit as a whole, so I'm just going to take some of this alcohol again, put some on a paper towel, and just start wiping off this surface. And now I'm gonna wipe out this controller bay, which is pretty dirty as you can tell. And I like to use a toothbrush to get into some of those hard to reach corners. Now I'm gonna work on cleaning up the front panel area, because there's some dust that's collected on some of these things. And now to move our attention to the back, I want to clean off some of this I/O, these cords. There's a little bit of rust on a couple of these RCA connectors, so I'm just going to take some sandpaper, go over those, try to get that rust out. Alright, so to get the front panel back attached, the first thing we have to do is unzip tie this button and screw this whole assembly back in. Hopefully the button is now going to hold. The button is holding in place, so that's great. I'm going to put the button assembly back where it goes, if I can remember which direction that is. Just like that. And replace the single screw that holds it in. Next I have to put back this little clear plastic block that goes over the LEDs to diffuse the light. Perfect. And let me just make sure the buttons are on there tight. Yep, great. So next step is to screw the whole front panel on. So unfortunately, it seems like these last two screw holes were glued back in place, slightly misaligned, so I'm not going to be able to put these two screws in, but there is one in that corner holding everything in place, so I'm not too worried about that. And it looks like I'll need to bend some of the metal along here down a bit to account for the additional thickness on the inside of this now. So we're almost done. The next thing I want to do is just clean off these controllers. The cords have accumulated quite a bit of dust over time, it seems. Something interesting about these controllers is that you can't really see this on camera, but the cord is significantly longer than the standard Super Nintendo controller cord. And this was an intentional design decision because if this is gonna be under a TV in a hotel room, you wanna have a cord that can reach from the base of the TV to the head of the bed, I guess, which would be on the other side of the room. So this cord is probably 10 feet long. And yeah, that's much larger than a Super Nintendo controller usually is. Now I did mention earlier that I was interested in trying to retrobrite these controllers, but unfortunately since it's winter, that's gonna have to wait. I don't have a UV lamp, which is what I would need to retrobrite stuff when the sun isn't as strong. And that would be to reduce the amount of yellowing that's on this controller. So what we're gonna do for this video is just live with it. If we compare the two controller cords between the one that's been cleaned and the one that hasn't, you can see just how much dirt and grime has built up over these past 30 years or so. I also want to clean off this upper part of the controller bay that slides in because it is a bit dirty. So the last thing that's really left to do is put these cartridges back in. And what we learned from our testing is that the system only seemed to boot if the red label cartridge was inserted on top. So I'm gonna start by putting the yellow label cassette with Super Bomberman 2 and Donkey Kong Country in the bottom slot. Just slide it in on the rails. Don't have to put too much pressure on it. You kind of feel it slide into its header. and then the red label cassette is just gonna slide in right above that. So I want to show you guys what I decided on for keeping this door up so it's not falling down all over the place without the locks engaged. What I decided to do, and it's a little bit jank, but I think it's pretty effective, is I just snuck some coin magnets under this top lip. I think there are a total of like 4 of them. There's one here, 2 here, and 1 that you can see peeking out on that edge. So what happens is I can push the door up, the magnets engage, and I can just push a little bit further to get the seal a little bit tighter. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. I don't think I could have asked for much better given given the circumstance. I think having a key made for these locks, or like finding a replacement lock, while not out of the question, is just a little bit above and beyond for the function it would actually serve. So that about does it, but there's one more thing I want to do. I was saving this for last because I think it'll be pretty satisfying. I have a feeling, just based on a couple pictures I've seen online and just looking at the bottom of this, that at some point in time they had feet on the bottom. So what I'm gonna do is just take 4 of these adhesive rubber feet and stick them on the bottom. So you can kind of see what I mean, how around each of these 4 holes there's like a circular outline that's a slightly different color. So I tried to pick feet that would like almost match that shape. So I'm just gonna go ahead and stick them on. And there you have it. A rare and obscure piece of Nintendo history gone from completely smashed and destroyed to coherent and collection-worthy. All it takes is a lot of time, patience, and even more superglue. As I touched on before, the paint job isn't perfect, but compared to the literal pieces it arrived as, I'll take this result any day. I didn't mention this before, but this is my first attempt at any cosmetic repair this involved. If there's a single lesson to be learned from this process, do not cheap out on international shipping. As for next steps, I need to figure out where I'm gonna put this thing. Have I mentioned it's freaking gigantic and weighs nearly 20 pounds? Anyway, thanks so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, subscribe and check out some of my other recent content. And with that, I'll see you all in the next one.